we all have people skills. We sell ourselves all the time. We sell our partner on what to eat for dinner. We sold ourselves for jobs in corporate. We sell ourselves on ideas of who we want to be, but we don't recognize that part of it. We think it needs to be something more to be successful. And I think when we go back to basics, that's where the real magic is born.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
Have you ever felt that pit in your stomach just before asking for the sale? You're not alone. 48% of business owners report that their biggest challenge is confidently closing deals without feeling like they're compromising their values. That's why we invited Justine Beauregard to the show today. Justine has cracked the code on how to sell authentically. As an award-winning sales strategist who's helped thousands overcome their sales anxiety, she's here to share her revolutionary approach that turns rejection into revenue without sacrificing your soul in the process.
Justine, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thank you so much. What an intro. Love it.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're highly excited about this
because tall order, Justine.
Sales leads to profit, and profit's a great word, right? And so everybody deals with this. Everybody deals with this if we sell anything. So we're very excited about what you're going to bring to us. But first, we'd like to know who we're talking to a little bit. So you want to share a little bit of your background and what led you to become this guru in the sales space?
You know, it's so funny. I tell people that I got into this job by accident, but also somewhat on purpose, right? Because I grew up with my maternal grandmother who had 5 children, and she basically ran her household. She had a business and was one of the founding women in electronics back when it was not even acceptable for women to own businesses. So it was really interesting to grow up watching a strong female lead in the movie of my life, right? And my mom on the corporate side was just like, you've got to make money. She was a single mom. She struggled her whole life to bring in enough income. And so we grew up without a lot of money. And I just saw this dichotomy and thought, I want to be on the side of my grandmother who is providing for herself and her family, who is an amazing mom and shows up for her kids and does what she wants and has all this freedom. But at the same time, my mom was so much more nurturing. And so I wanted to kind of strike a balance between those two things. And so when I first got into sales, it was a fundraising job, which was a glorified sales job. But I really took it because I was broke as a joke and I needed money, and it was the highest paying job I could find. So, you know, they put me on the phones, and it was one of those automated kind of telemarketing systems. And I would call so many people a day and just hear a lot of rejection, hear a lot of phone hanging up and all of that, following a script. And then one day my supervisor left me in charge because I was the most responsible, if you can imagine, at 20 years old, the most responsible in the room. And I just thought, I can't do this for much longer in the way that I've been doing it. I just need to talk to people. People are interesting. Why don't I just be myself? And so I remember this older gentleman, he was probably in his 70s. We get on the call and I'm talking to him for only about 15 minutes. And at the end, we had to make an ask, and we're supposed to ask for what their previous gift was. And it was $25. And I said, so, sir, would you consider maybe possibly giving $25 today? And he immediately said, no, I'm going to give you 50 because I've really loved this conversation. And I thought to myself, I think I just figured something out here. And my career kind of spiraled from there.
That's awesome.
What a great story. I love that.
Yeah, we could almost mic drop it right there, except for I don't know if we all get this concept. So let's I know we say we get this concept, right? But let's dig into it and let you share some more things about, you know, where that's evolved to. How about what's the biggest myth about sales that's holding entrepreneurs back from their potential?
I think it's sort of this weird undercurrent belief that you have to transform into a sales version of you instead of just staying who you are. I think so many of us have natural, innate sales skills. We have charisma. We have the gift of gab. We have the ability to relate to people, or we're really good at reading cues, but we don't trust ourselves enough. So we have to put on this really weird fake persona version of ourselves when we sell. And that's what I think everybody kind of naturally does when we start, is we think about who are the salespeople that we're exposed to? Used car salesmen, furniture salesmen, like these classic kind of sales personas. And then we try to attach ourselves to them instead of just, doing what I did with this person, which was being myself, sitting there, relating to him, learning about his life, understanding what he cared about, understanding where that overlaid with what I cared about so we could find some common ground. These are people skills. Sales skills are people skills. And we all have people skills. We sell ourselves all the time. We sell our partner on what to eat for dinner. We sold ourselves for jobs in corporate. We sell ourselves on ideas of who we want to be, but we don't recognize that part of it. We think it needs to be something more to be successful. And I think when we go back to basics, that's where the real magic is born.
Oh, wow. I love that.
I'm loving this.
Yeah, because, I grew up playing basketball, and every time I would go off base, my dad would say, just back to the fundamentals, the layups and the foul shots, right? Just go back to it. But so let's say you have somebody who has this sales system in place, and they say, okay, this is how you answer this, and this is what you do with this. And they're training people like they trained you early on, right? If you come into that sort of scenario, what would be that first thing you typically change in their approach?
It's always the part of the process that they're not comfortable with, because you can tell right away, right? So it's like, walk me through the process, and then I will figure out, because I'm trained to do it, I will figure out in seconds where they're off. And usually it's pretty early on. It's usually in the rapport building phase. Like either they're too friendly and they're not qualifying soon enough, or they're not friendly enough and they jump right into the brass tacks of everything. Like there's usually something right from the jump. But it's also, there's an awkwardness when you're following someone else's process, which is why I don't teach sales in a blueprint style format. I teach it in a framework so that it can be adapted to the personality of the person who is selling, instead of telling them, here's exactly what to say. Because when you're memorizing something, when you're scripted, people can feel it, and you have more sales anxiety. It's less natural for you, which is why in that story I told earlier, I had such success, because I wasn't scripted. I was totally just being myself.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Okay, I have to chime in with another question here. We don't have this one written down because this is about as organic as it gets. I literally just got off of a call with somebody interested in coming into our personal branding program.
Yeah.
Super cool guy. Okay. And this is going to be, actually, this particular one will go, this podcast that we're on right now with you will go live a few weeks from now. So nobody's going to know this, right? So I'm just going to lay it out like it is. Super, super nice guy, but loved to talk about himself and would not stop talking about himself, right? So I'm going to ask your opinion on how you deal with somebody like that, because it's really hard to like, okay, stop talking about yourself for a minute so I can talk about you and help you here, right? Okay, I know people are out there laughing everywhere right now because they've been through it.
Exactly. They've all been through it. We've all been there.
So, Justine, as our sales pro here today, how would you have handled that guy?
I'm so curious to know, because I like to build off of what you did. So I'm curious, like, how did you try to move him to begin with out of talking about himself so that you could get a word in?
Okay, great question. So I would say, okay, so let's go back to, it's like what we mentioned a minute ago. Let's go back to this. Why do you want to do that? Like why is it that you want to build a brand? You say it's this, but then you say you don't want to do this, but then you say this. So I'm like calling him on his inconsistencies of that and trying to bring him back to center.
Okay. I know exactly what's happening and how to fix it. And this is why I ask these questions. Your questions are too open-ended for the talker, right? So when you are trying to get back to it and you're saying like why, and it's super broad, he's like, well, let me tell you 9,000 reasons why, right? And he goes into the whole long dialogue about
Nailed
everything.
it. Yes.
Versus when you are able to move the conversation and synthesize. So here's what I heard you say. All I need to know from you now is a yes or a no. Is that accurate? Yes or no, right? And get more of closed-ended statements or questions so that it can move the conversation along. Or sometimes I'll say to people, if you had to describe in 3 words or less, or in 1 sentence or less, the answer to this question, what would it be? And start to train them to think in a more synthesized way. Because often when we keep it really open, and this is why the rapport building stage is usually done wrong, it's because we leave too much space. And the person that we're talking to is like given these really broad scale questions, and then they just go and go and go. And you feel awkward interrupting them or
Yes.
trying to put your 2 cents in because you want to, and also they might be getting or building to a point that you need to know to move the conversation to the next step in the frame.
So true, because the whole purpose of getting on with me is to tell me their story so I can help them craft that story, how that story appears to the world, right? So there's that balancing act that you're constantly doing.
Now, in your intake, do you ask questions around these types of things and then get more details, or do you do it all on the call?
We do ask a few questions before they get on the call. Yes.
Okay.
Not a lot of questions before that, but a few that really like, you know, one that I can think of is, you know, what specifically would you like to discuss regarding your brand and what you'd like it to accomplish for you, right? And trying to get them to be very specific about that. So most calls I don't have this trouble with. I think it's more a personality type that brings this to the table.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, was his response to that question short or long?
Very long. Actually, now that you mentioned that.
So this is a great, you know, using the intake as a qualifier, and even just from like a buyer psychology standpoint, when you leave open-ended questions, which I love on an intake, to be like, oh, this person's really long-winded. So I know as soon as I get on the call with them, I need to have those synthesized, structured approaches to these parts of the sales process, just knowing that going in. I know it doesn't happen to you often, but I think people listening, this does happen a lot. And I hear that a lot when I sales train is like, this person just went on and on for 15 minutes and it totally threw me off because now I didn't have enough time at the close and it felt rushed at the end or this or that.
I had to take them to a second meeting.
Yeah. But here's the trouble too, is some people, they end up getting ghosted between the first and the second meeting because they do it on the fly and they don't have an organized process to move someone from a first to a second meeting and to create more value. Now, you two, I can tell, are amazing at that. And I'm sure people would show up very excitedly for your second meeting. But I think people listening, that's a skill that I see lacking a lot, is the follow-up process and knowing how to move people and keep them engaged in the sales process. So when they're doing this, everything feels on the fly. So they're like, oh, it went too long. Oh, I have to do a second meeting. Oh, no one's showing up to the second meeting. And there's all these problems. So these are just things to think about in advance. How do I pre-qualify? How do I understand when someone's going to be long-winded? How do I move them if I know they're going to be long-winded and I want to allow that to happen a little bit, just so that I can learn? How do I build in the second and maybe even do it preemptively? Like, these are things to consider just to make your sales process tighter and smoother.
Yes. And I would like to add too, that the same goes in reverse, right? If you're asking either pre-qual questions or questions on the call and you're getting no, yes, okay. Right? Because we've got those personalities too. And would you say that the approach to that is the opposite, right? Asking more questions?
Open-ended
questions,
perhaps.
Right? Is that the counter balance for the person that we've all been on the phone call with and is like, does this person have a personality at all? Like, I can't get anything out of this guy.
Well, it's really interesting to see. Usually the people with the one-word answers, their buying style is actually much more decisive. The people who can say yes or no are probably the people who are going to close sooner. I don't know that you necessarily need to have this long dialogue. You might want to honor that part of the process and just be like, oh, I got my ideal buyer. They're a quick yes, they're a quick no. They know what they want. Let's just move the conversation along. And also, if you feel like you don't have enough context, if it's a you thing, which more often than not, that's going to be a you thing, you have to figure out, like, I love the question, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that just opens it up. Or I love to kind of give my 2 cents and then get their buy-in on it. Like, what I'm hearing is this, or like, here's what I would assume based on what I know so far, but, and kind of synthesize the information just so you can validate that you're on the same page before you move to the next step. But
I
I think
love it.
Right.
for
So
those,
you're validating that you really do have some rapport here, and
Yeah.
you're
Yes.
getting those cues that, okay, I need to go in for the close. How do you help clients overcome the fear of coming across too pushy or too salesy? Because even I've felt that way at times, you know what I mean? I think that's something that's sort of natural. We all sort of want to be liked by everybody. So, we don't want to be the pushy, salesy, all he cared about was the money type of person.
I have a really simple reframe for this, which is, as a salesperson, your number one job is to actually be an advocate. So you are advocating for the person on the other side of the conversation to get what they need. And most often they need what you sell. Otherwise they wouldn't be on that call. So when you show up and you're trying to move things along, it's from a place of genuine care and desire to help, not a place of, I want to put $1 in my pocket, or however many dollars in your pocket, right? So when we have those conversations, I want you to almost think about it. You know how when you do public speaking and you picture the audience naked, and that's like a way to break the ice mentally? It's almost like a mental exercise. Like, imagine, I call them cafe conversations. So imagine you're sitting across the table having tea or coffee with a friend, and they say, I'm struggling with this problem, and you know exactly how to fix that problem. You're not going to say to your friend, like, I don't want to be too pushy. Maybe we should talk about this in 6 months because you seem a little whatever today. Like, you're going to show up hard for them because they're your friend. You care. You're like, listen, this problem's gone on long enough. Like, let's figure it out. Let's fix it. Let's do whatever. And when you're following up with them, that's holding them accountable to the thing that they want. That's showing up for them. If you believe that that person does need something different than what you sell, you should not make them an offer, which is why the way I teach sales is a 2-part framework. There's the part where you're doing the pitching, where you're understanding what their needs are and you're getting to the bottom of it to find them a solution. Then you're doing the closing. And a lot of people blend these together. They just go right into making an offer from like early on in the conversation, where I need to know that this person is qualified, because I'll get on sales calls and I'm like, I'm not the one. Like, I will immediately, pretty quickly know this is not the thing that they need the most. And even sometimes I'll have like that internal struggle with myself, and I'll say it to the prospect. I'll be like, listen, I think I have an offer that can fit you. Here's what I'm thinking though. Like, I want you to validate that you agree that these elements of the offer are going to serve you in this way, because sometimes I don't know. And just opening up the dialogue to talk to them about it and get real. Like, listen, I don't want to make you an offer that's not going to be a fit. I'm like 75% certain, but I'm not 100% of the way there. And I don't want to make you an offer until I'm 100%. So let's like dive in the pool together and figure that out. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That doesn't make you look less professional. It makes you more of an advocate.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Well, I
that
would
advocate
agree.
concept. Absolutely love it. Justine, we could go on and on and on and ask you questions. So we're just going to ask you back. How about that?
Love it. I'd love to come back.
We would love to have you back. So for today, though, would you mind sharing how people can reach you?
Yeah. So my website is JustineBeauregard.com. It's JustineBeauregard. Very, very long name. So good luck with the spelling there. It'll probably be in the show notes. And my favorite place to hang out is on LinkedIn. So you can just find me, search my name, and I'll pop right up.
Fantastic. Wow. What wisdom. And thank you for helping me with my own personal issue today. I appreciate that.
My
That
pleasure.
brought a lot of enlightenment to it, Justine. You were spot on. Thank you so much. We loved having you here today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Grateful to be here.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at brandfaceguide.com.